What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the weekend college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my BBOC fellow co-hosts, Mike Calabrese, and Mike Randall. A lot to get to today. As always, we will add a future to our futures portfolio in the futures roundtable. And then we will talk about the weekend, go around the horn, talk about 3 or 4 spots that we each have circled. But before we do get started, let's talk about the week that was. Any rants that you want to get out, key takeaways. Randall, I know that you, before we got on the air, you mentioned the Kentucky-Tennessee under that you liked last weekend. Kentucky, I want to rant against the Kentucky defense, and I'm also curious to see where the Kentucky-Alabama total opens at. It might be 190, but what do you got from the week that was?
Well, yeah, totals are done for me. Won't be doing those ever again for the rest of the season. However, Stuck, very happy today. Back to life, back to reality. Coaches and teams that I came into the season fading, that has been a battle all year, or supporting, have finally started to lock in. Thank you so much, Mike White in Georgia, doing what I knew you would do on offense, which is pretty much nothing. You've lost 4 straight games. You lost 5 of 6. The covers are going the wrong way. Perfect. Out in Loyola Marymount, Stan Johnson, thank you for that wonderful loss at San Diego outright as a 3.5-point favorite. That was fantastic. And guys, we even got lucky with Hubert Davis. Hubert with a nice little loss there. Not only at Georgia Tech, which Stuck got, hats off to him, but they bounced back with the loss at home to Clemson outright. So guys, very happy. Some of the coaches, programs, teams, metrics that I just thought were a little overinflated are starting to regress. So very happy about that. On the positive side, much to your chagrin, Stuck, Scott Cross continues to cover at Troy. That's all he does. He's top 5 in the country, Troy, this year against the spread. So good week for me.
Calabrese, what you got?
Everything comes down to scheduling for me. I was just telling Randall before we hopped on. We got, I think, 154 games on Saturday, 3 games on Friday. Like, the power brokers of college basketball have got to get it together. The whole point of the sport is to spread it, to have it be on TV, to have it be available, to be able to create standalone games. There should be games, leading all the way up to the Super Bowl, starting at 6 a.m., like have it be an event. Like we used to have bracket busters. We used to have 24 hours of college hoops. Now we can't even get games on Friday to balance it out. And then you get decent mid-major games that totally get lost in the shuffle on Saturdays. So I think it does a great disservice to the game. And we're not always going to have these massive Saturdays like we just did with 3 top 10 matchups to be able to cover up for it. But the one I'm really burning on is the ref scheduling. I don't know if you guys caught this, but ESPN and a couple Twitter accounts have popped up that they've been following where these referees are traveling during the week. So John Higgins, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was at Rutgers, next day at San Diego, after that at Oregon State, at Stanford, at Purdue, at Texas, all in 1 week. Like, how much money does college sports need to make before people outside of the head coaches actually make the big money? Like, I know that NIL has finally come along and some superstars can make 7 figures and things like that, but it is ridiculous that we have these crews flying, crisscross the country, and then we're all shocked when they are absolutely awful, as they were in the Big 12 this week, throwing out Sampson for the first time in his time at Houston. Drew at Baylor got ejected for the very first time in his career. Like, these guys are clearly sleep deprived. They're trying to make calls from 35 feet away without the right angle. And like, I'm just at this point, I'm at a loss as to why we can't figure this out. There's got to be referees in regions where we can just keep them there so that they don't have to be, going the George Clooney up in the air millionaire club or million mile club trying to cover every single game across the country. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially your first point. I mean, just from a bettor's perspective, I've had a really light card the past week. I've been traveling for some family stuff, and then I just got back home, about to get into tomorrow and Saturday, and I'm like, there's no lines out for Saturday yet, obviously. So I'm like sitting down, and it's going to take me an hour to go through the 3 games tomorrow. And then I got to go through 155 games on Friday. I mean, it's ridiculous, just from a bettor's perspective. And then you're trying to track injuries and the market throughout. I mean, it's absolutely crazy from a betting perspective. I would like just like, put 20 games on Friday. Just cut it by 20. You can still have a absolutely full slate. And
I mean,
like in college
there's a
football,
reason, yeah.
I was just gonna say college football, like you already had the MAC during the week, right? And then they started doing
Conference
another
USA, yeah.
Conference USA. And then like that gives a spotlight to those conferences. And it's not like you miss them on Saturdays, right? Those aren't the games that are generally on people's TVs, even if you have multiple screens. So I wish that I wish that like we would have. Remember the Ivy and MAC would always be on Fridays, no matter what. Like we need like 3 or 4 conferences that no matter what, they're playing on Fridays. What were you gonna say, Covers?
Yeah, I think really there should be nothing left on the table. Like if you are the Summit or the SWAC or the Ohio Valley, like get some games on noon on a Monday. Like it's not the most ridiculous scheduling thing that's gonna cause coaches and administrators to complain. And then all of a sudden you have inventory to serve up to CBS Sports, to ESPN. Like someone will cover that game, and then you start to bring in those gamblers who just fall in love with that midday action. There's a reason why people bet on the Cincinnati Reds every Tuesday afternoon. It's not because midseason baseball is electric. It's because it's the only show in town. You have an opportunity to build that brand equity and a little bit of loyalty. And I don't know why they moved away from it. They've just moved away from all of those gimmicks in the last 3 to 4 years. And I think it's really hurt the game. Like particularly Super Bowl week, everyone's talking about how to grow the game, and Taylor Swift is doing this, that, and the other to bring in new fans. Like, what is college basketball doing to bring in new fans and making it easier to watch and follow teams as opposed to harder?
Yeah. My takeaway from this week is Chris Holtman's got to go. I mean, Trey Galloway is out there looking like, Jordan in his prime. You blow an 18-point home lead to Indiana. I don't know how much longer he can last there. Ohio State in the dumpster. And then I also want to give credit to, which will be a transition to our first segment. I want to give credit to South Florida, who, I mean, I don't think many people would have seen this coming. But now South Florida now in the American standings is all alone in first place at 9-1. Florida Atlantic's 1 game behind them, 8-1. They had a comeback victory over Charlotte. Abdur Rahim is doing an amazing job there. We saw, we saw what he did with Kennesaw, and then we've seen the Kennesaw drop off this year as well. I know that they also lost some players, but they've now won 8 straight. So a lot of credit to South Florida. I will say, as we transition into our futures portfolio, I was going, if someone sees these priced out later, my futures portfolio is actually going to be Charlotte at 4-1 to win the regular season, but I'm not going to give that out, or because like there's AAC teams playing tonight. So, if like Florida Atlantic loses to UAB, like the prices could change. So I don't want to give that out, but I will mention that the reason I like Charlotte, if you look at the standings at 4-1, I have them like 40% to at least get a share. And what's important about that, if Charlotte getting a share, is that if they end up tied with Florida Atlantic, they have the tiebreaker because they beat Florida Atlantic and they don't play them again. So they're 1-0. And if they get the revenge against South Florida, they play South Florida at home. Then if there's a 3-way tie between South Florida, and this is the books would decide it on who gets the tiebreaker, who gets the 1 seed. So if there's so most likely Charlotte will need to beat South Florida at home for this bet to hit, but they will be favorites. And if they win that game and say that South Florida, FAU, and Charlotte all finish tied for first, then Charlotte would win the tiebreaker, because if you take the head-to-head of all of them, they would be 2-1. And the others would not be 2-1. So that's an important distinction that I don't think is being priced in. And if you look at Charlotte's schedule, I mean, their hardest game's at Memphis. Have you seen Memphis lately? But their schedule is Temple, UTSA, Wichita, UTSA at home, Wichita at home, Tulsa again, South Florida at home, Rice at home, and ECU. That's it.
Yeah.
That's their schedule the rest of the way. This defense is legit. They can, they really make you work on the defensive end. They bring a press and they have good rim protection. I really like what they're doing this year. They just blew that lead against South Florida. And then if you look at Florida Atlantic, and we've seen Florida Atlantic like lose almost multiple times. Every time they go on the road, it's an adventure. They could lose tonight to UAB. They play Memphis twice. They play SMU. They play Tulane. They're at North Texas. So they're at South Florida. So they have a pretty difficult schedule. Then if you look at South Florida has SMU. They're at Charlotte. They could even lose at Rice. I think this is probably the peak of the value in USF. So Charlotte, very easy schedule, beneficial tiebreaker potential. So 4-1, if you see that out there tomorrow, grab that. I bet some of that today. But I won't give that.
Stuck. Yeah, kudos to Aaron Fearn too. Was really good coach in Australia. Came over, has been an assistant. First year with Charlotte, really has followed in the model that they've had before with their head coaches. I mean, Ron Sanchez was there, was a disciple of Bennett. So yeah, hats off. Great job, Fearn with Charlotte.
Yep. Yeah. I love everything they're doing. The one team that could really throw a wrench into it is SMU, but I think they'll probably suffer another loss or two, but they do have the tiebreaker, at least head to head over Charlotte. But Charlotte 4-1, I think there's value. But let's get to our futures roundtable. We have TAMU Final Four. We have UK national title. Not loving either one of those. The problem with Texas A&M, I still don't mind it because just the way that they play. Once they get out of the SEC, like the way that the offensive rebound, you still have one of the best guards in the country. They just really miss, they need someone else to go. Henry Coleman now is becoming like almost non-existent. He can't handle bigs down low. And, they obviously can't shoot worth a lick. But
yeah, it's stuck on that point. Yeah. I was trying to find any commentary from, Aggies Insider or anything on Coleman. Like his minutes are going down as well. Obviously, he's not producing, so they want to give some other people a shot. But it's been a Jekyll and Hyde situation from the beginning of the season to where we are now. I don't know if there's a deeper explanation, injury that's not listed or just a loss of confidence. But I agree with you. If he doesn't step up, I don't see them really getting out of the first weekend.
Yeah, they would just need a beneficial matchup because they could still board. They just can't play a big team. A team like they got to get to the Final Four. They got to avoid like UConn and Purdue, right? They got to have someone else knock them off because Julius Marble, I don't know what's going on with him, but they could really use him. Like there's just like an academic radford or something with the university. I don't think he's coming back at this point. But with those guards, with Radford and Taylor, this is a team that took Houston on the road right down to the wire. They beat Iowa State on a neutral court. They could play with anybody. Kentucky, it's their defense. I mean, I don't think they can win the national title, but with their offense, I think they can get to at least the Final Four if they don't fix their defense. Who else do we have? We have Houston to win the Big 12. That's looking really good.
Great CLV on that one, Stuck. Great CLV on that one. Yeah.
Underdog. Who else do we have? How am I forgetting?
Do we have the Canes on something?
South Carolina.
South Carolina Final Four. Johns to make the Final Four. Yeah, hopefully. I don't mind that either. I think Johns just sets the coaching. They're going to be a tough tournament team. They just got to get in. They're on the fringe now. I guess Texas A&M technically could play themselves out too. So hopefully those two teams get in, and then it's a tournament. Things break right, and even these teams that go into the playing game, like one will make a run every year. So we have 5 futures. It's time to add a 6th. Randall, hopefully we don't have the same one again. I will. What did you bring last week?
South Carolina, right? No?
And South Carolina didn't cover.
Oh, yeah, didn't cover.
Yeah, they didn't cover. That melt, we can thank you for that. That melt against Ole Miss, -3.5. But what do you got this week?
Actually, I had Ole Miss in that game. I was thrilled. Okay, wow. So this is what I'm going with. There are only 4 teams in college basketball right now with 6 or more quad 1 wins. All right. Purdue and UConn have 8 each. Houston has 6. And the only other team right now that is 6 is the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, people are going to get thrown off of Wisconsin because of the losing streak, and they're going to the rack, by the way. So this could still maybe get a little frisky. However, let's remember that teams that make a run in the NCAA tournament always have a part of the year where they struggle. Do you remember last year? And it's usually around late January, early February. Remember last year with Connecticut? They ended up losing 5 of 6 and 6 of 8. And then we got the speech from Hurley that they're coming. The difference, or the similarity rather, in this situation is Wisconsin is good metrically. You may not like what you see. You may not like the total melt at Nebraska, but they rank 11th in adjusted offensive efficiency. They are 32 in adjusted defensive efficiency. They make their free throws. They're great on the board. They got somebody who can penetrate, in AJ Storr, who's been fantastic. Yes, they have struggled lately. They've lost 3 straight games. Losing at home to Purdue, guys, there's no shame in that. So throw that one out of there. The loss at Nebraska, they were up big. Team came back on the road, tough place to play. I ignore that as well. The Michigan loss is bad, but that translates to value. So I'm seeing Wisconsin plus 1,000 to make the Final Four, plus 900. They are around teams like Illinois, Baylor, Creighton, who we hate, of course, and they showed it again the other night against Providence because we don't guard Carter on a 3-pointer from half court. Fine. That is the area that I think Wisconsin has value. They've told you guys all year. I think this is the year where good, solid, fundamental teams that the public constantly overlooks, Tennessee, Wisconsin, can make a run. Senior team, a lot of returning minutes, good coaching guard, good size, wing players, can shoot, and they're going through a rough stretch right now. So that gives us value. Guys, Wisconsin Badgers, I think there's a plus 1,000 out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, they were up 18 at Nebraska.
Right.
They went 3 of 19 from 3 against Purdue. And then I think they had they went 5 of 19 against Michigan. But I think they had just like a little bit of a letdown after those 2 games. Storr is the key here because it is a team that's comfortable in the half court, which I like in March, right? They're very comfortable grinding the game down to a halt. They're good on the glass. But Storr is that guy who can just get you buckets when you need them, right? And if you're going through a dry spell, they're a very balanced team. And then you have a guy, you have like a wild card like Klesmit. If they could ever figure out how to just plug in Esigen at the right times, just to get like a couple threes off the bench. But yeah, you have a very experienced guard in Hepburn, 2 good bigs, and then that Storr is that guy. I didn't know if he was going to fit well, but he really does. So I don't hate this one at all. Wisconsin Final Four 10-1. What do you got, Calvaries?
So I saw that one of the books opened up their odds to be selected as a #1 seed on Selection Sunday. So I immediately closed the window. I wanted to go through and just do my guesstimate for what the price would be on all the teams. So UConn and Purdue are minus 2,500. Makes sense to me. Houston minus 400. That's too rich for my blood. But then there's 3 teams who are sitting there for the 4th #1 seed. Arizona minus 135, Tennessee minus 105. And I was like, well, I guess I would play UNC if it was north of 3-1. They're plus 360 to secure a #1 seed on Selection Sunday. And here we go. When we break down their schedule and a little bit of how they got here, they're coming off the loss. I actually like the honesty from Ingram, and then Baycott talked about it. Apparently, they had multiple players sleep through like a pregame nap, and they were late to walk, to their training session, and then walkthroughs and shoot arounds, and then they come out and they fall down 15-2 to Clemson to open that game. So I think that explains that true sleepwalking through the beginning of that game. But outside of that, if they are in a situation where it's apples to apples with Tennessee, they have a head-to-head win over Tennessee, an 8-point win in late November. They have that non-conference win against Oklahoma. They need to finish 7-1 in the regular season, in my estimation, and then win the ACC title. So in the tournament title. So what does that mean? They're at Miami, they're at Virginia, they're at Duke. Those are their 3 tricky games the rest of the way. Can they go 2-1 in that stretch? I think that they can, and certainly north of 3-1, it's piqued my interest. Because I don't need to belabor the point. We know what they bring to the table. Offensively, they're top 25. Defensively, they're top 10. Haslametrics, shot quality, actually rate their offense higher than 23rd in KenPom. And I spoke on the last episode about Harrison Ingram kind of morphing into that Brady Manic role, that comparison. If he continues to elevate his play and shoot as well as he has from 3-point range, he's a perfect complement to Bacon and RJ Davis. So I think there's enough value here to throw this into our portfolio mix.
Okay, I'll say my thoughts until I give mine. All right, let's go. I'll just throw out Duke 5-1 to win the ACC regular season. I still think North Carolina is probably close to its peak. This is flying in the face of what you said, Calabrese, but I think that there's a good chance this comes down to the last game of the regular season, which will be in Cameron, and Duke will be favored there. But I look at North Carolina, I mean, going to Virginia, going to Miami, as you mentioned, those are two tricky games. Duke, meanwhile, their road games are Florida State. They do have to go to Miami, Wake, NC State, but they get Virginia and North Carolina at home, which I think is massive. So getting them at 5-1, where I think it's a good chance that this comes down to the finale, and they just got to be one game back. And then I got to look into the tiebreakers. Well, depend on if anyone else is there. Virginia, some people were kind of hyping Virginia to win the ACC. I don't see it. I think I don't trust their offense. I think we're at the very peak of the market on Virginia. So I think Duke has a little bit of value. So let's go Duke to win the ACC regular season. All right. So we have Duke. Well, number 1, Wisconsin Final Four. Number 2, UNC 1 seed. Number 3 is Duke to win the ACC regular season. All right.
Clarification on the rules again. Can we vote for our own, or do you have to vote for someone else's?
No, we've all been good about voting for others, so you can vote however you'd like for now. All right, 3. So 1 for Wisconsin, 2 for UNC, 3 for Duke. 3, 2, 1. Wow.
Calabrese, I was going to go North Carolina. I think it's such a good pick, but I have this attachment to Tennessee. That's the problem with the 1 seed, but I was so close. That's why I voted for Stuckey's, but it's a really good call by you.
Well, as seniority, been doing this podcast for 7 years. So, well, not this specific one, but podcast at action. So I get to break the tie, and I'm going to go. Let's see. Texas A&M was mine. Houston was mine. South Carolina was Randall's. Johns was mine. UK was Calabrese. I'm going with Randall here. The reason is I do like the ceiling and the floor of this Wisconsin team. I think we're getting them, at a good point. It's kind of like their bottom, got a 3-game losing streak. And, I think that they'll beat Rutgers. Then they have Ohio State at home. You have Iowa, Maryland at home, Indiana, before Illinois at home. So they think they're probably going to go on a run here for all the reasons I mentioned before, why I like them as well. So, and with UNC, my problem with UNC, I still think that they have some regression coming on the defensive end from a shooting perspective. And it's just the ACC is weak this year. So I think that's going to hurt them. And if I look at, if you go to like Torvik, he has UNC as like 17% to get a 1 seed projected based on 10,000 simulations. So I think I would need like 5-1 to bet it, because just, UNC has those tricky games at Duke, at Virginia, but like it's at Virginia, at Miami. Think about all the other teams in power conferences, like in the Big 12, in the SEC, even the Big East. Like they have many more opportunities to pick up big wins. And I think just the ACC's overall perceived and actual real weakness is going to work against North Carolina. And I also think they'll probably take a couple more losses. So we're rolling with the Badgers. Final Four 10-1. Calabrese, do you hate it? Love it?
I think I think the number, we're pretty close. If it was like 12-1, I may have voted for Wisconsin. It's not that I hate the play. I think you described it perfectly, which is I have a firm grasp on their floor. I think maybe in your vision, their ceiling's a little bit higher, but they're a solid team, And if honestly, if they had not blown that lead to Nebraska, where would this number be? Like the Michigan game, I think we can all forgive it. But when you combine it with the melt against Nebraska, is that a downward trend? Are they falling apart? Have they lost confidence? I think that's probably an overreaction at this point in early February. So I think it's still a good play. I like the addition to it. And I agree that North Carolina has almost zero room for error. They can drop one more game in ACC play to still win the regular season crown, and then they'd have to win the conference tournament title and honestly, not only win the ACC tournament, but hopefully get really good opponents in the semis and title game to be able to boost that resume because they are going to go up against Tennessee, who can potentially stack, top 15 wins along the way for both the regular season and conference tournament crown.
Yeah, I will mention, Wisconsin also, they have a top 10 strength of schedule. They had a top 15.
Their metrics are good. Yes.
15.
Yep.
Their metrics are outstanding. And I know this is an outside chance, very outside, but we just mentioned their schedule, right? And in the non-con, they have a neutral win over Virginia, SMU. They beat Marquette. If they'd have to beat Purdue is the problem, but they have maybe a 3-4% chance of getting a 1 seed. But they could get up to a 2 seed. I think a 3 is probably more realistic, but they certainly have upside with that schedule. There's a chance that I have them favored in every game up until that Purdue game in the finale coming up here. So they could certainly win 7 in a row and then make a run, maybe get some revenge over Purdue in the Big Ten championship. Then you're talking maybe 2 seed. All right, good stuff there. Wisconsin to the Final Four. Let's move on to the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, wherever you want to go with it. I'll throw it to you first, Randall. What are you looking at?
Oh, please, San Diego State. Enough with the 3-point barrage last week against Utah State. Worst 3-point shooting team in the Mountain West, guys. All of a sudden, we turn into lights out NBA Jam. Now we're going to play on Friday, one of the 3 games we have on Friday here. They're going to Nevada, a Nevada team that went through their lumps and lost 4 of 5 games, but seems to have righted the ship and had a good win away over Utah State as well. I like this team with Steve Alford. They have guards who can score. They're flammable. They're shooting well from 3-point range within Mountain West competition, 37%. Not great on the boards, I get that, but they do force turnovers. Give me San Diego State to go back to some normal offensive struggles like they have. I think this team is a notch below what we saw last year. Nevada is still a team that's forgotten about in the Mountain West with all the great stuff going on with Colorado State, etc. San Diego State with that Utah State win. I know they're great at home. They're 40-2 or something like that at home over the last 5 years. But Utah State is a good team. And Nevada, coming off that game, was able to do some damage there against Utah State away. That impressed me more. Give me Nevada. I think they're going to be either a pick 'em or maybe favored by 1 on Friday night against San Diego State.
Cosign. This was mine for Friday night as well. And look, San Diego State, we've talked about this a number of times, but I kind of dug into it a little more, and they have not been great on the road, especially against the top of the conference. So their road games this year, they lost at BYU, they lost at Grand Canyon, they did beat Gonzaga, they beat San Jose State by 3, they lost at New Mexico by 18, they lost at Boise, they lost at Colorado State by 8, and then they beat Air Force. Who cares? What do a lot of those places have in common? It's elevation. So number one, this is a tricky spot because it's a 3rd game in 6 days. They played Saturday, Tuesday, now Friday. Nevada played last Friday, laugher, another laugher, and they have an extra day of rest, and they're playing at home, used to the altitude. So it's a tricky spot for San Diego State. And for what it's worth, Alford is 8-2 against the spread against Dutcher head-to-head. That's really impressive. Their guards, I think, can give San Diego State's smaller guards some trouble. And, they can operate in the mid-range. They can make tough shots. That's what you need to do against San Diego State. And they don't turn the ball over, which really helps. And by the way, Nevada, I mean, look, when KJ Himes is on the floor, they're elite defensively. So he can give you like 15, 20 minutes. He'll probably give you some fouls, but he can match up against Lede. But Nick Davidson is on a tear. He had 25 and 22 the past 2 games and 25 against Utah State. So, and that's their offense is really humming when he's out there and can kind of space the floor as well. But when it comes to San Diego State, and this is a revenge game from, and Nevada, for what it's worth, is probably playing for its tournament life. They need this game. This would be a massive game. This and then their next game at home against New Mexico. But in that first game, they were in all kinds of foul trouble at San Diego State, and they're just a different team there. But it was a 2-point game with 10 to go, and they shot 6 of 23 from 3 and 7 of 17 from the line. San Diego State went to the line 34 times. Don't think they'll get that friendly of a whistle here. But getting back to my point, San Diego State in altitude, this team struggles. And I think a lot of it, and look, you mentioned it. They've shot like 46% from 3 over the past 4 games. They've gone nuclear, a little bit of regression there coming. It's not a great 3-point shooting team, which is a good thing for Nevada because they're very aggressive, which is a good thing against San Diego State. They're going to trap. You're going to take away ISO opportunities, and you're going to have to, move the ball, make threes. That's not San Diego State's strength, especially in altitude. But look at Jay Powell, who's their starting 4. He splits time with Saunders. Look at his numbers and minutes in altitude games on the road. So at Boise, he played 15 minutes and had 6 points. At Colorado State, he played 9 minutes and he had 1 assist. He did nothing in the game. At Air Force, he played 20 minutes and had 1 point. So at Boise State, he played 15 minutes only, 6 points. I think that he really struggles in altitude, and there's something there. And just from what I watched too, it looks like so that really hurts their depth as well. But this team just in general is struggling in altitude. Tough spot, great matchup for Nevada. They're playing extremely well. I like the Wolfpack as well. Calvary's, what are you seeing for the weekend?
I would love to get 5 with the Aggies hosting Tennessee. I think this is a sleepy stretch for the Vols. They're at A&M, they're at Arkansas, home against Vandy, at Mizzou in their next 4, coming down off of playing so well in that Kentucky game. They're feeling great about themselves. They're playing their way into that number 1 seed conversation, whereas the Aggies are 4 points away from a 7-game winning streak. They lose the 1-point decision to Arkansas, 3 points to Ole Miss. They got wins over Kentucky, at LSU. They swept Mizzou and home against Florida in that stretch. And a win here is critical. I think you're going to see a rowdy crowd. I think you're going to see a hungry Aggie team because this clearly puts them in the field.
This clinches.
They're on the right side of the bubble right now. They're probably like a 10 seed, but this is a win that clinches it for them. And give me Wade Taylor the 4th. I got a chance. Like, he's gone for 30 plus 4 times in the past 2 months. He helped them upset Kentucky. He nearly upset Houston in the Halal Guys Classic. And Houston love Halal Guys. Little half chicken, little half falafel, white and red sauce. Anyway, the key here to me beyond Taylor is Radford. He continues to play despite his arrest for evading police, and Buzz Williams has said he supports him. He, is actually really proud of how well he's played under the circumstances. 26 against Florida, 22 against Mizzou. He hits the go-ahead bucket that ends up giving them the win against Florida. He's the clutch piece right now for them because defenses can key on Taylor down the stretch. So if he continues to play this well, barring any, decision by the school to pull him off the floor, I don't think that's coming. If he plays, I'm on the Aggies. I'm hoping for 5. I'd play it down to +4 against Tennessee.
Yeah, I had A&M circle too. Can they? I mean, look, they don't turn the ball over, and Tennessee's not a great defensive rebounding team, and Texas A&M's the best offensive rebounding team in the country. So they could do some work there. They can also get to the line a ton. Tennessee's going to foul, but Tennessee's 2-point defense is so good. Like, can A&M make a 3? I don't know, but like you're going to have to make 3s against Tennessee. They're shooting. What is Texas A&M shooting now? 25% in league play, but they're shooting 20. What did they shoot for the year? 26.6 for the year, 357th in the country. I got to see who's worse than them. Teams that are worse than Texas A&M from 3. Coppin State.
Are my boys in there? Mississippi Valley State?
Mississippi Valley State,
There we
your
go.
other boys, Detroit, Buffalo, and IUPUI. That's some impoverished company. So maybe they're due, but like this is who I mean, they are better than this.
They're better than Uwe Pui. They are better than Uwe Pui from long range. I've seen the warm-ups. I've seen the ball go through the net. It's got to happen.
I mean, Radford shooting 26%. He's like a career 33% three-point shooter. Taylor shooting 30. He's like career 32. And then it's like, I mean, Hefner is only shooting. Yeah, he's shooting right on his average of 31. It's not a great shooting team, but like what's Carter shooting 20%? He's a career 30%. So they have a little bit of. This would be the game where you got to make a couple. But they're a bad shooting team. They're always going to be a bad shooting team, but I don't think that they're 25% bad. I mean, come on. And they're going to have chances against this Tennessee defense, and they're going to get offensive rebounds. So I like the spot. I mentioned Nevada. Let's talk a little Chicago State. Chicago State going to South Carolina State. No, I really love this spot. This is a random
This is an
spot.
intersectional rivalry that we've all been waiting for. So I can't wait for you to see this one up.
So here's why I like this spot. Chicago State is independent. They don't have a league. They only have 2 D1 games left. It's this and then Wednesday against Eastern Kentucky. They've been off since January 31st. Why is that important? They played 10 games in 30 days. They played like 5 games in 7 days. And this is a team that doesn't have a bench at all. Rest will help. They've also been playing really well. They won at Stetson. They lost by 5 at Duquesne. They're 10-5 and 1 against the spread on the road. It's a team that also played like 10 straight road games from December 22nd till the mid-January. So this game means something to them. It's like you only have 2 games left. There's no chance at a postseason or conference tournament. Meanwhile, South Carolina State, they're 1 game back in the MEAC. They play Norfolk State, who's in first place next. Like, what? Why do they care about Chicago State? Also, it's a good matchup. Chicago State has fixed some of their point guard issues. They'll have the best 2 players on the court by far in Corbett and in Cardette, who's probably going to get drafted. And Chicago State's half-court man defense is really good. That spells trouble for South Carolina State. They're 2nd percentile in half-court O, and they're only 9th in transition per synergy. So I don't know how they score. Chicago State's rim D is bad, but South Carolina State rim O is one of the worst in the country. Chicago State wants to get the rim at all costs. They're not that efficient there, but South Carolina State's rim D is so bad. These are 2 aggressive teams. They press. They want to turn opponents over. A lot of fouls, second chance points. But Chicago State's much better against the press. They want to get out in transition. South Carolina State, horrendous transition D. This is just a great matchup for Chicago State in general, if you just look at the X's and O's. And I think that they care much more about this game. I don't really think that South Carolina State cares here. So give me Chicago State in its second to last game at South Carolina State. Real random one. Hoping to get like around a pick. But like this matchup, team's playing well of late, and I think the break will serve them well. Randall, what do you got?
I like great teams. I like great coaches, and I like teams that are motivated. And that's why I keep going back to Bradley, and I will do it again at home against Drake. Listen, Drake is fine, guys, but they're just a little bit overrated by the market. They're only 10-11 against the spread. Bradley 13-8-2. And guys, remember, that is earlier in the year. They lost 5 straight games, including 2 games in the Missouri Valley Conference. So they can't mess around. But they got Connor Hickman back, and they were on fire. They lost away at Indiana State in overtime. The fact that you take Indiana State to overtime at their place is very impressive. And we get them coming off a really rough loss to Evansville, which they should have had. Now they get a Drake team here that I think has started to show the regression that we knew was coming. They do a good job, but they struggle on the boards. Bradley at home on the boards with their length up front is a problem. Drake lost to Indiana State away. They went at home to overtime with Southern Illinois. They had a 2 overtime game against Missouri State. They've started to have some struggles here. Now they're playing an away game at Bradley. Bradley is coming off a loss. Bradley is always good at home. Ken Pom has this at 2. I will grab it right away. Bradley at home, healthy, coming off a loss with a rebounding advantage, ready to rock and roll against a Drake team that I still think is a little overinflated here by the market.
Home Bradley, the juggernaut. Calabrese.
So, as some of you know, I am a Loyola, Maryland grad, and I can tell you some special things about their home court advantage. One, they don't have their own bands. They rent out a high school band in North Baltimore that comes for like 30 minutes of the game. They play 2 songs, they roll out. And because of that, there's usually a couple hundred close friends and family at games. That's it. This team this year stinks on ice. They're 0-8 against the spread at home. And according to Evan Maya's home court advantage rating, they're 352nd in the nation. They've been the worst home team against the spread in the Patriot League in the last 3 seasons, cashing south of 40% of their tickets. And then when it turns into what they do on the floor, they're 308th in shooting efficiency. They're 348th from the line, 333rd in terms of turning the ball over. Now they welcome in Colgate. Colgate only laying, at least according to projections, between 8 and 10 points in this game. I'd lay up to 11 with the Raiders in this spot because I just think the number's too low given the fact that this is a dead cat bounce for the Greyhounds. They snuck out road wins over 8 and 14 Navy. And then they became, according to the numbers I could pull, at least, maybe you can double check me on this one, Stuck, the only team in Division I this year to win a game in which they shot south of 30% from the field. They shot 29% against American and won 44-43. So they're 2-2 in their last 2 games. I think that's giving an impression that they're a little bit feisty in the Patriot League. They're not. Here comes Colgate. They remain the class of the Pat League. They're 10-1 straight up in conference play. This is actually Langle's best coaching job on the defensive end, in my opinion. They're top 50 in shooting efficiency defense. They're far and away the best defensive team in the league, and Loyola is 346th in offensive rankings, according to Evan Maya. So I just view this as 2 teams that are headed in the opposite direction, and I think if you can get it under 10, this is probably one of my biggest bets in Patriot League play all season long.
You mentioned their free throw shooting, and one of the reasons for that is Golden DK, who I think
all-timer name, by the way.
Yeah, he's seen his minutes come down. Spanish guy in the not as good as Aldama, but following his footsteps. He had a stretch earlier over like 8 games. He's the big man. He had a stretch where he went 4 of 29 from the line over like 10 games. 4 of 29. What's he shooting for the year? Let me see. He's one of the worst free throw shooters I've ever seen. 2021, he went 19 of 64, 29%. He was 30% in 2022. He was 32% last year. Improved this year. He's 28 of 82, 34%. He started his first game. He went 6 of 8. So I guess
don't let him get hot, man. Don't let him get locked in from the line.
Yeah, one of the worst free throw shooters you will ever see. If you're ever betting Loyola and it's in a close game and he goes to the line, you're screwed. All right. Let me throw out. I'm going to throw out Colorado. Now, it's going to come down to who plays tonight. We'll see. Or if they play on Saturday. I need Cody Williams in there. It's going to be really good in the NBA. He missed their last game. He's been hurt this year. This is a revenge spot against Arizona. They lost by 50 at Arizona. But you could throw that game out. Williams and De Silva didn't play. Like, meaningless. Colorado has 4 really good players. We'll see if Luke O'Brien, who's a good role player, he missed last game too. They dealt with a ton of injuries. But they have 4 really good players. You lump Lampkin in there and then 3 NBA guys. If they're all fully healthy, this is a top 20 team, in my opinion, especially talent-wise. Arizona's not the same team on the road. They're 353rd in away from home metric per ASLA metrics. And I am a bit worried about Colorado's transition defense and how they defend the pick and roll, but I'm just trusting the spot. They can also they can get after the defensive glass. That's important against Arizona. And Arizona kind of struggles defending in the post and in cutting action. They're 18th and 12th percentile for synergy. That's like everything Colorado wants to do. And this is just, I'm assuming Arizona wins tonight against Utah. That might suck some of this value out. But Colorado at home in league play over the past 20 years, when the opponent has 3 or fewer days of rest, 44, 21, and 1 against the spread, 68%, covering by 4 points per game. That's since 2005. Most profitable team in the country by a mile in this spot. 16-3 against the spread as an underdog, 84%. This is a brutal travel spot. This is the home court advantage that I have ranked number 1 in the country. Colorado can, I think, punch its ticket, assuming it wins tonight, and then beats Arizona on Saturday. Love the spot here. Knowing how everything's priced this year, it's probably gonna be 1, but hoping to get like 3.5. I swear, every spot I used to, for 20 years, all the spots that I bet everyone like situational spots don't mean anything. Now they're all priced in. The market finally priced them all in. Now they're all 3 points. The way that I want to bet, and my volume has gone significantly down as a result. But hopefully, you can still find some good ones, like Kansas State against Kansas. That wasn't priced right. It eventually came down, but you especially got to get these early because the market jumps all over them. Randall, what else you got?
Last one. How exactly is Gonzaga going to stay with Kentucky? Exactly. How is Gonzaga going to keep a game close with Kentucky, who has lost 2 straight games at home with all their firepower? How is that going to happen with a Gonzaga team this year, guys, that has a fantastic resume of 0-5 in quadrant 1 wins and 3-1 in quadrant 2? This is not a Gonzaga team that can score at this level. They have the bigs inside. They're going to limit Gonzaga as well. They'd have to absolutely shoot great from 3. Kentucky's going to get into transition and get them all messed up. The Ken Pom, I think the number, I expect this number, Ken Pom has it at 3. I expect it to probably be 5 or 6. I do not see, as great as Mark Few is, a way that they can keep this close. Gonzaga has not looked good on the road this year. I mean, they won at Pacific by 9 and allowed 73 points. They lost to Santa Clara for the first time in 11 years, whatever that is. Washington, they lost by 5. This is just not a vintage Gonzaga team. And this is a Kentucky team that still has Final Four talent. And sure, they have all their defensive problems. So if you want to bet the over in the game, I'm fine with that. I do not think Kentucky is losing this game. Therefore, I'm going to lay what appears to be 4, 5, maybe 6 in that range right away on the Wildcats, coming off of 2 straight home losses to now against a Gonzaga team where they just have to limit EK and they have the bigs to do it.
Well, the way that they would keep up is if Kentucky gets 0 stops, which could happen. But I like the spot, and yeah, Kentucky should have plenty of success in the offensive end. Calabrese, what do you say?
All right, Kentucky, couple home losses. I'm going to back a team, couple losses on their resume recently, buy a low spot. Penny Hardaway, the Memphis Tigers. If I can get 7, I'd maybe play it up to 8 in a revenge spot against Tulane. Listen, they blew a 6-point lead down the stretch when they played the Green Wave the last time, and Tulane made 40% of their threes and 23 foul shots. And they have to play that way. They are a very good shooting team in the AAC, but overall, Tulane is an awful defensive team. They're 12th out of 14 teams in the American, according to Evan Maya. And Memphis has the offense to kick it into gear. David Jones had 32 and 11 the last time they met. I think he eats him up again in this spot. And if we just get a human performance from Tulane from 3-point range, I think Memphis will win comfortably, hopefully north of double digits or north of 10. So I don't have to sweat this out down the stretch. But I think this is a nice buy low spot on a Memphis team that, yes, they have some losses recently, but with the exception of the Rice one, I don't know if any of them are truly horrific. I still think there's plenty to like about this Memphis team, and I have the best player on the court in David Jones, so I'll go with the Tigers.
Bad news, they're up 20 in the first half over Temple.
Yeah, of course, naturally.
I'll throw out this one's it's gonna be painful, but we'll see where the line is. This is a great spot. Florida at home. Again, ticket punching game against Auburn. They've had a week off. Auburn's coming off that Alabama embarrassment when they just ran them out of the gym. A couple things I like about this matchup. Florida really good at limiting transition opportunities. They're elite at defending cutting action. That's basically everything that makes the Auburn offense go. 99th percentile frequency, 96th percentile efficiency for Auburn. Florida, 95th percentile defending that. And I think that the Gators can also live at the line here, especially at home, and they can live on the offensive glass. That's what you have to do against Auburn. I think Auburn still has a little bit of shooting regression coming, especially on defense. They give up, their unguarded jumpers have not been falling. I know that they're long, but they're very aggressive with their ball pressure, so they do give up some unguarded jumpers. I think Florida's capable of taking advantage at home. You just have to hope that Florida can limit its turnovers. That's really what this comes down to. but I like the spot here for Florida as a home dog, week off, playing for its tourney lives against an Auburn team coming off that Alabama game. I still don't trust their guards on the road yet. They can prove it to me by March, but I still have questions there. So I like the Gators. They can do a good job on the glass here and get to the line. And then I think they match up pretty well defensively. Broom's going to get his, but other than that, I like the matchup and the spot. Randall, you're out. Calabrese, did you have anything else?
No, that's it. I fired the clip.
I'll mention one other one. Stetson at home against EKU.
Hatters.
I hope that I love the Hatters at home this year. They match up really well with EKU. I hope we can get like -1. Doubt it, but we'll see. Pick
My Colonel.
Stetson.
Colonel.
What's that?
I know.
Colonel.
Cozart, man. Cozart's a beast.
But Stetson zones, mixing a lot of zones. EKU horrendous zone offense, and Stetson can handle the press. They have 2 guards who can handle the ball. And EKU's been a bad zone offense the last 2 years, like really, really bad. And Stetson will mix in a lot of them there. Worry a little bit about the offensive glass for EKU dominating there, but I think it's a good matchup here, and Stetson should get a ton of open looks. One other one, Randall, I'm curious to get your thoughts here because you have a good pulse in this team. I was mad. I bet Clemson, but I was hoping UNC won. But UNC going to Miami. This is a must win for Miami. Like, they're not even on the bubble right now. George, who's their star freshman, is going to play in the NBA. He hurt his ankle. I don't know his status yet. With or without him, he's important. But with or without him, and he'll impact the line. I think this is a good spot for Miami. They scored 38 points. I mean, Larinaga was embarrassed. You got 5 days to prepare for this game. Fewest Miami scored since 1985 when their program was reinstated. You should get a best effort game here. Conference dogs, for what it's worth, after scoring 40 or fewer points, 158, 114, and 6 against the spread, covering by 3 points per game, over 58%. UNC defense forces a ton of isolation. The Hurricanes have guys that can thrive there. There's still some regression coming for the UNC defense from a shooting perspective. They rank the 96th percentile on unguarded jumpers, which they give up at an above average rate. Miami, who has been shooting below expectation in ACC play, has a number of shooters. They're actually a good shooting team. They're like the perfect candidate to give UNC some overdue medicine from beyond the arc. Miami's good on the defensive glass, and they don't foul. Those are 2 primary avenues for UNC, and UNC won't exploit Miami's turnover issues. I know sometimes Miami just decides to turn it over themselves, but that's what kills their offense, and UNC won't exploit that. I'm a little bit worried about their like really anemic post defense, but I think it's a great spot here. I still think UNC's at the peak of its market value. Randall, I know you have a good feel for Miami. Any thoughts there on the Canes maybe getting like 7? I know Georgia's status is semi-important, but you did get, and they've dealt with injuries all year.
Yeah, Georgia's special. He's a special player. Listen, I don't like Miami to go to the Final Four anymore. They just have too many struggles. However, in this spot, I completely agree with you. You could maybe get 8 even too, because people are going to bet North Carolina here, especially coming off the loss. Agree with you with the regression with North Carolina with the offense. Still think the turnovers are possible with them. Miami can bang inside. O'Meara can play well. Larinaga, it's a great spot. If you're uncomfortable with it and the number's too low, you can always go with the over, because I don't think Miami's going to all of a sudden find defense in this game. So yeah. I think Miami can cover, and it's going to be a high scoring game. So I agree with you. I'm on it. Would love to get 8. I think it'd be a great spot for them. Do I think they pull it out? No, because I think RJ Davis just does enough, but it is a great spot. It's a great coach, bounce back. No one's going to believe in them. And I like the over as well, because I don't think Miami's winning. It's not going to be low scoring, and that I don't think.
Yeah. O'Meara potentially could get Baycott into foul trouble with
Sure.
like his craftiness. I think he did that last year when they won at UNC. But desperation spot for Miami. And like I said, they can compete on the defensive glass. They don't foul at least. And they're going to get some open looks from 3. And you should get their, I mean, they're either going to quit or, which I don't think they will under Larinaga, or you'll get their best effort here. So yeah, I like the Canes. All right. That will do it for us. Add a little Badger Final Four future and talk some weekend hoops. It was a pleasure. As always, gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a 5-star review. Do a bunch of giveaways in a week or two. So just leave a 5-star review. Doesn't matter what you say. Those really help us out. We'll also be back Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern for BBOC Live. Make sure you check myself, Mike, and Greg Waddell out. And then we'll be back Monday for the weekend recap. Guys from the 3-Man Weave, as always, have their Wednesday episode, and then we'll be back late next week for the weekend preview. March will be here before we know it. College basketball is about to get even more exciting. Good luck on all of your wagers this weekend, and we will see you on Saturday morning. Cheers.